All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are stepping into a real historical detective story for this explainer. We're going to strip away centuries of assumptions, the traditional narratives, and re-examine one of the most famous and rapid religious conversions in human history. This isn't just your standard story about theology. No, it's a story about survival, hidden political motivations, and being able to read the writing on the wall. Because to figure out what really went down, we have to look past the myths and dig into the hard, gritty geopolitical realities of the ancient Middle East. Honestly, it's a masterclass in strategy that is completely relevant to understanding power dynamics even today. And that is exactly why we're starting right here, the year 614 CE. We need to anchor ourselves not in a moment of religious revelation, but in a massive geopolitical anomaly. Imagine this. In 614 CE, a Persian army, fighting right alongside its Jewish allies, captures the city of Jerusalem. They utterly defeated the Byzantine Christians who had run the city for 3 centuries. For the first time in nearly 600 years, literally since the destruction of the First Temple, Jewish forces were governing Jerusalem again. It was an absolute shockwave. A messianic current rippled through the entire Jewish world all at once, sparking uprisings as far as 2,000 miles away in Yemen. For a brief, shining moment, it really looked like the ultimate historical restoration had finally arrived.
But, as history often shows us, we have to look at how quickly that dream completely unraveled. In 614 CE, Jerusalem falls to this Persian-Jewish alliance. Fast forward just 3 years to 617 CE. The Persians suddenly realize that governing a conquered Byzantine province with a Jewish client population is just way too politically complicated. So what do? They switch sides. They ally with the local Christians instead. The alliance completely, totally fails. And by the time we hit 622 CE, the Byzantine Empire has reorganized itself, the military option for Jewish restoration has absolutely collapsed, and right in the middle of this chaos, a new figure arrives in the city of Yathrib.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where our main subject enters the picture. Abdullah ibn Salam was watching this entire geopolitical collapse unfold from Yathrib, a city we now know as Medina. He was a member of the Banu Kanuka, a prominent tribe of Jewish goldsmiths. But more importantly for our investigation, he held the absolute highest scholarly rank available in his community. We are talking about a brilliant, top-tier scholar. He had mastered the Torah, he had mastered the Babylonian Talmud, he knew the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. This was a man who knew the intricate, incredibly rigid biblical rules of prophecy inside and out. He knew exactly what a prophet was supposed to look like. Which brings us to the ultimate anomaly, the central mystery of our explainer today. In 622 CE, a charismatic leader named Muhammad arrives in Yathrib. And Abdullah ibn Salam, a man completely steeped in centuries of rigorous, highly complex textual tradition, meets him, and within a single hour publicly declares him a prophet and converts. Wait, what? Why? Why in the world would a master of the Talmud make the single most consequential theological decision of his life with such unbelievably rapid speed? Well, to answer that, we have to look past the theology.
Section 1. The Motive. Geopolitical Collapse.
To really understand the man, we have to act like investigative historians here and look at the collapsing strategic environment around him. On the left, we have 614 CE. High hopes, right? The Persian-Jewish alliance successfully takes Jerusalem. But as we head into 628 CE on the right, disaster. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius launches this massive counteroffensive, completely reversing the Persian gains and reconquering Jerusalem. The Sassanid Persian Empire is collapsing in real time, and Byzantine reprisals against the Jewish communities who collaborated with the Persians, they are swift and they are brutal. The world Abdullah lived in was becoming incredibly hostile. The vehicle that briefly offered his people power had been totally destroyed. He needed a new strategy for survival.
Moving on to Section 2. The Evidence. A textual cross-examination.
Let's actually do a textual cross-examination of the hard rules Abdullah was sworn to uphold, because, as a top-tier scholar, these specific texts formed the load-bearing walls of his mind. First up, we have Deuteronomy 18. Moses tells the Israelites, "If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that prophet has spoken presumptuously." Right there, that is the first biblical standard for a prophet. It is a strictly falsifiable test of fulfilled prophecy. Abdullah knew this standard intimately. Yet when Muhammad arrived with what was a largely untested and contested prophetic record at that time, Abdullah just completely ignored this requirement.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Deuteronomy 13. This text clearly states that even if a prophet performs a miracle, even if the sign actually comes true, if that prophet says, "Let us follow other gods," or basically leads you away from Torah observance, he automatically fails, period. Theological fidelity completely supersedes any miracles. Muhammad was explicitly calling people toward a new dispensation that superseded the Mosaic framework. So by the strict rules of Deuteronomy 13, that is an immediate failure. But again, Abdullah entirely bypassed the rule.
And then, wow, we have this incredible text from the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin 11a. After the last of the prophets died, the divine spirit of prophetic revelation departed from the Jewish people. Just think about what that really means. This isn't a fringe idea. This is core rabbinic doctrine. Abdullah knew with absolute 100% certainty that his tradition declared the channel of prophecy had been firmly closed for 1,000 years. Even if a remarkably worthy man appeared, the channel would not reopen. Yet, he certified it as open anyway.
Which brings us to Section 3, the anomaly, the test that wasn't.
So, if Abdullah didn't use the biblical tests he had spent his entire life studying and teaching, what procedure did he actually use when this charismatic Arab leader showed up in Yathrib? Let's look at the actual encounter. According to authoritative Islamic tradition, Abdullah asked Muhammad 3 specific questions to verify his prophethood. First, what is the first sign of the hour? Second, what is the first food the people of paradise will eat? And third, why does a child resemble its father or maternal uncle? Muhammad answered them, and Abdullah converted right on the spot. But look closely at these questions, guys. This is basically eschatological trivia. The answers to these specific questions already existed in the Jewish Midrashic literature that Abdullah knew by heart. And this brilliantly illustrates the real maneuver taking place here. When we compare those biblical tests to Abdullah's questions, the difference is just staggering. The biblical tests, they're falsifiable. Abdullah's questions about the afterlife, completely unfalsifiable in any human lifetime. The Bible focuses on strict theological fidelity, while Abdullah just asks trivia. But most importantly, the biblical tests have rigid conditions for failure. Abdullah's questions had absolutely no wrong answers. You see, he didn't actually administer a test. He constructed a ceremony disguised as a test, expertly bypassing all the biblical rules he was supposed to enforce.
And finally, Section 4, the verdict, strategy and survival.
When we put all these pieces together, we are clearly not looking at a scholar making some clumsy theological error. I mean, honest theological errors leave a record of struggle, a debate over texts. There was zero struggle here. What we are looking at is a master political strategist focused entirely on survival. If you want to know why he did it, just consider the wildly divergent fates of his people. Over here, we see Abdullah's tribe, the Banu Kainuka. Just 2 years after Muhammad's arrival, relations broke down and the entire tribe was expelled from the city. But what about Abdullah ibn Salam himself? Because of his rapid, brilliantly timed validation of the new leader, he was completely protected, he remained in the inner circle of early believers for 40 years, he survived in a hostile, collapsing world by recognizing a new political vehicle and immediately securing his place inside it.
When you strip away the centuries of tradition, the historical record reveals a profound, almost chilling truth about survival, power, and adaptation. Abdullah ibn Salam knew exactly what he was doing when he walked into that room. The questions he asked were never meant to be a test. They were a strategic handshake. And it really leaves us to wonder, as we look back through history, how many other grand theological events were actually just masterclasses in political survival?